Hello. Today I would like to talk about crafting in Path of Exile 2. I believe I am able to talk about this subject because over the past 6 weeks or so, crafting is basically the only thing I've been doing. I've been crafting gear between the ranges of 10 divines to 600 divines, is the most expensive item I've sold, and I've crafted a few Mir tier items. The reason I've done strictly crafting is because the endgame mapping system, I believe, is very boring and needs a ton of rework. But, much to people's disagreement, crafting system in this game is actually pretty decent. It just needs a few tweaks, and I'm here to convince you of that. So, basically, I will lay out the options that you have. Again, it's Path of Exile 2 and it just came out, so there's not that many options, but many of these options are very good and balanced, depending on the budget level that you're doing. So, people extremely underestimate the value of ground loot in this game. A lot of people are running around with 300 plus rarity to 600% rarity, and people are way too focused on the number of divine drops that they get, or straight currency drops. That's actually, you're going to get a decent amount of currency, but you can double your currency if you can identify high tier items that have good rolls on it. So, the first method of crafting is identifying items. It's not necessarily crafting, but I'm just grouping all the what is a good item in this game, and the first one is identifying it. So here's an item. It's a T3. It has a decent base. We'll identify it, and we'll see if it's Mir tier. Boom. We identified it. Let's see the rolls. It's got life, which is decent, and then the other rolls suck. So this item is complete trash. There is multiple options that you could do if this wasn't complete trash, though. You could exalt it, or you can chaos spam it, or you could just sell it as is if it had really good mods. So, the way that you can double your currency if you have high rarity is by identifying high tier items, and then if it rolled 3 mods or 4 mods that are actually really, really strong, the item immediately basically becomes divine in value. So, for example, if you identified this bow off the ground, and as you can see, it has, let's say, 3 definitely good modifiers, and 1 is okay. So, the suffixes on this is crit, attack speed, and proj skill. If you identified that, it's a divine. And you could obviously chaos spam this if you wanted to not sell it for a divine, and you can try to make it into more than a divine. Or you can identify an item like this, which is also roughly a divine. Again, has crit, attack speed, decent fizz damage, decent lightning damage, and dex. And if I'm able to exalt spam, or exalt this with a very high fizz percentage, this item goes from being, roughly 100 exalts from a divine in value, which is currently, to maybe 50 divines if I hit 150% fizz. Boom, I didn't. So, unlucky. So, since that's the, cheapest step to crafting is exalt slamming. That cost me an exalt, obviously, which is 1/300th of a divine, so that basically cost me nothing. So, when you're magic finding around, throw away your trash, but you should be exalt slamming and chaos spamming at least 3 good modifiers when you're walking around. So, you're going to need a huge knowledge of the game if you're going to be exalt slamming or chaos spamming items, because you're going to need to know what is a good item for basically every single build in the whole entire game. Or you can just make a dump tab of 1 divide items and throw it in. So if you didn't know that this was a good item because you don't play a bow build, or you just don't know all the archetypes in the game, and many people would throw away this item, but it's actually very, very good. So I think I bought this for like an exalt or something. It's worth at least 100 exalts, because like I said, if I exalted percent fizz on this item, it would have been worth 40 to 50 divines. I didn't, so I will be chaos spamming it now. So again, we want this fire damage to turn into fizz percent. Boom. I actually hit fizz percent, but I hit 22% fizz percent, so it still sucks. Boom, I'm gonna hit it again. I still hit the good modifier, so it's not bricked yet. It's not bricked yet. It went worse because the dex is lower. Okay, now it's basically bricked. So yeah, you could keep chaos spamming this. I mean, it still has roughly 3 decent modifiers. The attack speed is still the highest, lightning damage is decent, and then fizz damage is decent. So, I mean, if I did turn this accuracy rating into, again, 130% fizz damage, it still would be worth, like, 10 divines, maybe. But that's such a low percentage that it's basically worthless now. So, the original item was probably 100 or 100 exalts. Now it's maybe worth, like, 10 exalts. I mean, someone might be able to chaos spam it, but in recent times, chaos orbs have gotten fairly expensive, so each chaos orb is like 5 to 6 exalts now. So since this item is probably worth like 10 exalts, it's just not worth it. So I'm gonna throw it away. But there was a scenario. Okay, there's like a 10% chance that your fizz roll turns into a percent fizz. Yeah, your prefix turns into a percent fizz, and then there's 6 modifiers. So there was a 1 in 60 chance that a 100 exalt item turned into a 10 divine item. So that's the math that you need to be playing in your head. And again, this is really, really hard because you basically need to know every single build in the entire game. So again, for most people, you're probably just going to want to throw a bunch of your high tier, high roll items into just a dump tab, and then people like me will come around and buy up your items and then Exalt Slam or Chaos Spam into it. And again, we're going to do the same thing with this. We have our suffixes are really good. Lightning damage, I would keep lightning damage. Basically, I want this cold damage or fire damage to turn into elemental damage. So currently, this item's probably like worth a divine. If I turn the fire damage or cold damage into elemental damage, this 10x's the value. And again, when it comes to the math, there's a 10% chance, there's a 10% chance for the prefixes to roll elemental damage, and there's a 2 in 6 chance that I hit the mods that I don't want. So again, it's like a 1 in 40, 1 in 30 chance that this item 10x's in value. So we'll see. Boom. I did not rip it yet. I definitely lowered the value of this, so previously it was probably worth a divine, now it's probably like 100x. We'll hit it again, did nothing, and now we basically bricked it. So we hit 2 of our suffixes, it turned a 1 divine item into basically nothing, so I'm going to throw that away. Unlucky. So this is why people say, oh, crafting sucks, all you are is losing, it's straight gambling. But again, it's the law of big numbers. I just crafted on or touched 3 items, which if you're in a map and you have rarity, or if you're purchasing things, you can get 3 items within, 20 minutes of gameplay. So, I don't know, in an hour's time, you're doing this with 20 different items. And of those 20 items, 4 of them will probably upgrade. And again, if I turn a 4 mod item into a 5 mod item, that goes from a 1 divine item to a 10 divine item. And if you're getting a 5 mod item every hour, that's 10 divines per hour. And so, yep, that's the cheapest versions. Again, exalting an item is very, very cheap. Chaos spamming an item is fairly cheap because you'll usually use like 3 to 5 chaoses to try to get a 3 mod item into a 4 mod item, or a 4 mod item into a 5 mod item. But now I will talk about higher value items. So here, these gloves are pretty good for a build that I was using. The fizz damage is good, the life is good, the mana is good, the melee skills are good, and the leech is actually good for the build that I used. So these items, since this mod is 4 or 5 mod item, if I chaos spammed it, there's like a 0% chance it upgrades into something good. So I could sell it as is. I don't know, it's probably worth like 5 divines to 9 divines, depending on the build that wants this. Or you can vol it. So since I value this item at 5 divines to 10 divines, I'm going to use an Omen of Corruption to take away the option to do nothing, because I want something to happen to these buffs. So I could add a prefix to it, or I could add another gem socket to it, and that's a 66% chance this item upgrades into something better. If I hit a prefix, then there's some prefixes that are basically worthless, it's not going to do anything, but I'm basically kind of hoping for another socket. And so since these items, let's say for argument's sake, they're 5 divines, if I hit another socket, I double the value of my item. And since it's a 66% chance to upgrade the item and a 1/3 chance to somewhat brick the item, then it's mathematically good for me to Omen of Corruption and corrupt all items that are 5 divines or higher, if you can stomach the loss. Again, this is a law of big numbers. Obviously, if you're poor and you aren't sitting on hundreds of divines, then this is not ideal. But if you corrupt 10 items, and then obviously, since 66% of them are going to increase in value, then it is mathematically advantageous for you to do it. So, boom, I'm going to hit it. Damn, I'm real unlucky today. So I basically somewhat bricked the items. I mean, 2 of the mods that are still good, I mean, I still have life, so I basically turned a 5 divine item into, I don't know, this is kind of shit, so maybe 50x. So I'm just going to throw those away. Again, unlucky. The last item is an item that is really, really good. So some people may think this sucks because really no one's playing crit two-hander, but it's actually pretty good. Again, the suffixes are really good. It's crit, crit, and then the max melee skills. And then the prefixes are actually pretty good. The fizz percent, not great. The flat fizz damage is actually pretty good. And lightning damage is, I don't know, decent, I guess. So I would value this item at probably 50 divines to 100 divines, if not more. And once it gets to the range of 50 divines, and since there's 5 modifiers on this that are good, then only in this very, very high item bracket is it advantageous to use expensive omens. So I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's advantageous, because not a lot of people are playing crit two-handers. But if I were to, Omen of Woodlings currently costs like 13 divines. And so if I were to hit this with a Chaos Orb, and it changed this fizz damage from 104% fizz if I hit the highest roll, which is the ideal roll that I would want, if it hit 170, this item would probably go from a value of like 50 divines to probably like 300 divines or something like that. So it would 6x the value. And again, percentage-wise, if I re-roll this fizz percent, there's like a 12% chance for it to roll a fizz damage, and then there's like 10 different tiers of it. So to hit like 150%, it's probably like a 3% chance. So there's a 3% chance to me spending 13 divines to get 300 divines. So mathematically, it's not worth it, so I'm not going to do it. But that would be the end goal of the craft. And Whittlings, even though some people have said that it's only used for mirror crafting, this is pretty much what I have gotten all my money on over the past, I don't know, several weeks. So since I currently have probably like 5 to 10 mirrors worth of gear, I'm only crafting items that are like, or trying to craft items that are 50 div in value or higher, and that's enough value. And those items, I mean, to get to that value of item, your item has to have like 5 or 6 good mods. So what I've been doing is I've been searching for either 4 perfect mod items or 5 good mod items, and then using Whittlings to get the 6th mod. And then again, if you hit a good Whittling, you will 5 to 10x the value of an item. So I've made many items due to this. I mean, you can see I've crafted, I have a boatload of items that are worth, I don't know, 100 divines to 800 divines. I recently crafted this morning, and this is just an item. Again, I bought this with pretty much perfect suffixes, and then I used omens to craft the prefixes. And it's the best crit crossbow in the whole entire game. So I did get lucky on this one. I crafted this for like 300 divines, and it's 10% higher than the second best crossbow in their entire game. So while I was a big loser here, I probably made, I don't know, 1,200 divines from getting lucky on this item. And I know it's worth this much because I've also crafted the second and third best crit crossbows in the game. But also you can see that in these, a lot of the items that I have crafted, I end up corrupting. Because I'll craft an item, if they don't sell over several days or at the prices that I want, again, it is advantageous for you to corrupt items because the corrupted value of the items exponentially increase the value of the item. So a good example, I guess, would be this one. So this item, if it was uncorrupted, it would probably be worth like 50, maybe like 40 divines or something like that. But since I got a third socket, which is a 33% chance, that it tripled the value of the item. Because another 12% crit bonus is basically like 6 to 8% more damage, depending on your build. And once you get to expensive items, it will exponentially increase the value of your items. So that's what I've been doing. That's a generalization of what you should be doing if you're looking to increase your currency generation. Again, if you're looking to just straight farm monsters, you need to be picking up tier 4 or tier 5 items. They will roll 3 to 4 good mods, and those mods or those items will be bought by people like me that are just spam crafting stuff. And those items easily are worth 100 exalts to a divine, easy. I mean, you'll be getting many of those per hour if you're actually farming a lot of content. So that's option 1. And then option 2 is you can become a hideout warrior like me and just craft on items. And again, you're just taking the reverse roll. Now you're just purchasing items that have 3 or 4 good mods, and then you're either exalt slamming, chaos spamming, or omen crafting, depending on what the potential outcome value of the item that you're crafting is. So after going through all this, yes, there are things that GGG should change, in my opinion. I guess what I'll say at the beginning, before I talk about the changes, is that currently in the game, people say crafting sucks, but the items that you can get in this game are extremely strong. So in Path of Exile 1, in the first week, or the first 2 weeks, or the first 3 weeks, people are still running around with 3 to 4 good mod items. And then in PoE 1 at least, you can bench craft the 5th item. So the power level difference of every single system that has been added to PoE 1 is only really improving the items by like 20% or so. So, yes, power creep hasn't hit PoE 2, it has hit PoE 1, but in general, at the same time point in PoE 2 versus PoE 1, we are basically just as strong. It's just 20% weaker because we're missing like a mod or something. And that's bigger in some cases, like weapons. If you're only a 5 mod item versus a 6 mod item, okay, sure, maybe you're doing like 30% less damage. But for smaller items like boots, okay, maybe you're missing like a lower resistance or something. That's not going to make you do 30% less damage or whatever. And at least with omens, which it currently is, people are crafting mirror items week 1 or week 2 or week 3. So if GGG buffs the ability to craft, we're just going to have perfect gear within weeks. So that's why I kind of want to push back and say if everything is buffed and we're given multiple systems to increase crafting, the amount of power creep that we're going to get is going to be insane. Like, I mean, even in week 3, I was basically getting near perfect items. Okay, sure, I play a lot, but again, I would want the crafting system to make it so that I want to continuously play the game at least through week 1, or sorry, month 1 or month 2. I don't want perfect gear in week 1. So with that being said, again, I think ground loot is very, very good. For some reason, people are still hiding ground loot, or still not identifying ground loot, or they're not exalting ground loot, or they're not chaos spamming exalt, or chaos spamming ground loot. But ground loot, legit, is probably like half the currency that you could be making if you, again, either just throw it in a dump tab, or correctly exalt or chaos spam your items, which a vast majority of people are not doing, because a vast majority of people do not know what is a good item. The next thing, exalt slamming. This is, in my opinion, very good. It feels good to exalt slam an item because, again, if you're going around your map, you identify something and it has 4 mods, and then you hit a really good exalt slam and it 10x's the value of your item, that feels good. So, in my opinion, exalts are good. Now comes to the first change that I would make, is chaos spamming. I do think chaos spamming, at least in current PV2 terms, it only re-rolls 1 mod. I think that's fine, but if they're going to implement that, then I think Chaos Orbs are too rare currently. So, in my opinion, I would switch the rarity of Exalts to Chaos Orbs, because, I don't know, in 10 times more scenarios would you want to Chaos Spam an item versus Exalted item. Because really, you can only, I mean, if you have a rare item, it's obviously 3 mods already. The maximum amount of Exalts that you can use is 3 to get to a 6 mod item. But for Chaos Spamming, I mean, you could Chaos Spam an item 20 times for potentially a good item. Like, maybe an item has literally 2 perfect mods that are like really, really, really good or really, really rare, you would still spam Chaos Orbs into that. So I think if GGG needs to change something, they need to switch the rarity of Chaos Orbs and Exalts, just because the amount of scenarios that Chaos Orbs will come up is substantially more than exalting an item. Now comes to Voling Orbs. Vol Orbs, again, they're really, really good. The rarity's fine. It could be even more rare, because currently they're like 5 to 1 for Exalts. And again, you can't spam Vol an item, so maybe you can make Vol Orbs more rare, but I think they're good. It's either you basically brick your item, or you massively upgrade the item. I mean, adding a socket to a weapon is insane. I mean, it increases the value of it potentially 2x. And then, yeah, the prefixes on some, or the implicits on some items are very, very good, which can increase the value of it by, let's say, 30%. So, again, Vol Orbs are a risk reward, but if you're voling 20 different items, it is advantageous for you to be voling your items. What I will say that is a completely dogshit system, and I didn't even showcase a option, is essences. Essences, in my opinion, basically suck. The first level of essences, you make a normal item into a blue item, and that's a single modifier. I mean, again, going to all these options that I have, either exalting an item, chaos spamming an item, or voling an item, or using omens on an item, the only time I'm using these currencies is if the item that I have already is 3 mods or 4 mods. Essences do not get me to a 4 mod item. They could get me to a 3 mod item, so potentially greater essences are at least not completely worthless, but just base essences are literally straight worthless. So I do think they need to be buffed. If essences or greater essences guaranteed the highest roll of a modifier, that would, I think, be super OP, and I think power creep would be too much. But if they want to save the essence system, that's something that they should look to. And then lastly, for omens, I would suggest a change. I think Widlings are way, way, way too strong. Widlings can pretty much guarantee perfect items, and so a lot of the mirror crafters can spam 100 Widlings into an item, which currently costs 1,300 divines. But if they literally just straight spam it, they can guarantee craft mirror tier items. And I don't think this is healthy for the game. I don't think you should guarantee mirror tier items, even if it costs 1,300 divines. And if this system goes forward, then people are going to have the perfectly crafted bow in the first 1 or 2 weeks. And in my opinion, that's boring. So, in my opinion, I would remove Widlings from the game. And the other omens are also very strong but expensive. I would actually buff the drop rate of these so that omens are more readily available for people to craft. Because currently, I use the example of a weapon for a reason. In pretty much no scenario, maybe outside of rings, is the value of a 5 mod versus a 6 mod ring or a 4 mod to a 5 mod ring going to be worth the value of using omens? Because, I mean, let's go with boots. Like, if you're crafting a pair of boots and you have 4 perfect mods on a boot, like, even if you had 6 perfect mods on a boot, they might be worth like 50 divines. It's just the incremental increase in value of like the boot slot, glove slot, helm slot is just not enough to use omens on. And so if omens were a lot not as rare, then you could actually use omens on the glove slot and it wouldn't be griefing yourself. Currently, omens are, again, really only used for weapons because weapons still, there's a ton of weapons that, again, that's pretty much how I've made 10 mirrors, is there's a ton of people that are buying weapons between the prices of 50 divines to 300 divines. So those are the changes I would make. Hopefully you learned something from this. It was a longer video. Peace.